All right, welcome back. Let's talk about Delaware now. 2 more championships to get ready for in the next week. Let's start with the 3A, where we have 2 of our Henlopen squads. One of this year's 3A teams back in the championship game after losing that heartbreaker to Middletown last year, 28-22. This season, the Eagles got vengeance on their minds, steamrolling most of the competition, avenging that state title loss against Middletown 48-0 in the state semifinals last week. I know that felt good.
Yeah, it sure did. And now they have to seal the deal. Smyrna has to capture the title that slipped through their grasp last season. This year's title game will be a rematch of last year's semifinal game against the Dover Senators. And the Senators, they've been on a revenge trail themselves, Brandon. A lot of revenge on a lot of teams' mind in these playoffs. And they've had some upsets in the playoffs. Last year, they got blown out by Smyrna, and now they have another chance to take it to the Eagles and spoil their season. Now, in the first round, the Senators went up against the Golden Knights, a team that shut them out 21-0 earlier in the year. So what did they do? They returned the favor, but when it mattered most, beating them 20-0.
And I gotta say, that might be the most surprising upset that we've seen in Delaware. Let me take that back. Lake Forest losing to Sussex Tech was extremely surprising as well. But then they steamrolled St. George's in the semifinals, which we kind of expected. And now the Senators find themselves in the championship game, once again, the underdogs against the Eagles.
And so now it's the Senators and the Eagles. Smyrna has to be the heavy favorites in this game. They played each other earlier in the season. Smyrna blew them out 46-21. I do believe the Senators are a better team now than they were in October when these two teams matched up. But it's hard to see that growth from there to now is enough to overcome the difference between Smyrna and Dover. So I definitely have the Eagles as the heavy favorites, as the team that will win this game.
Especially when you see Smyrna go out there and roll Middletown 48-0. See, we thought Middletown-Smyrna was going to be the championship game, but as it turns out, the 3A brackets, we got Dover on the other side of the bracket, and we had Smyrna, Middletown, and Sally's all on one side of the bracket. So that was a murderer's row that Smyrna was able to come out of very easily, as it turns out. Dover was able to, once they got past Sussex Central, and Central had a lot of injuries toward the end of the year, they were able to get by Central. They had an easy task with St. George's. But this time around with Smyrna, we saw them stay with Smyrna in the first quarter of that game earlier on this season. But obviously, Smyrna, we can just tell they have so much talent. It just took over, and Dover wasn't able to keep up. Dover's going to have to play a perfect game. They're going to have to eat the clock on long drives. That's one thing I don't really trust Dover to do, is to be able to sustain those long drives, to eat up the clock, to keep the ball out of Smyrna's hands. I got to ask, though, what's Smyrna going to do? Is Brian Knight going to be out there or Brian Wright going to be out there at quarterback for Smyrna, or are they going to run a lot of the earthquake like they did during the semifinal game? It's going to be interesting to see.
And I think they have a lot of options on their hands, and I think they'll do whatever they need. Obviously, they'll do whatever they need to do to win. But I think, again, they have the captaincy seat. They have the advantage over Dover. It's a team that they know very well, and it's also a team that they're very confident against.
All right, so now we move on to the 1A. We have a rematch of last year's title game, the Bulldogs against St. Elizabeth. The top 2 teams in the 1A at it again. Last year, they doubled up St. E's 28-14, capturing the title. And this season, they look even better than last year. Some players told us they didn't want to give up more than 21 points in a single game, but not only did they accomplish that, they haven't lost a single contest.
And not only haven't they lost a single contest all season, they've all been blowouts, including a 62-point win. But this game against St. Elizabeth could be their toughest test, should be their toughest test, and it might be their only test all season.
Let's hope it's their toughest test.
I believe so. I mean, I'm hoping for it too. I mean, they haven't been challenged at all. St. Anne's Elizabeth and their star running back, Quasim Benson, is coming, though. But the Bulldogs, Kylese Wilson, Caden Shockley, and the rest of the crew look to be ready. Now, Brandon, who do you have in this game between the Bulldogs and St. Elizabeth?
I told you in week 1 when I picked Sussex Tech to beat Laurel, and then Laurel blew them out 31-7. I said I ain't picking against Laurel the rest of the season. I mean, Laurel has not only gone out there and blown out all the 1A teams they faced, they've gone out there and blown out a bunch of 2A schools as well, with Sussex Tech and Delmar and a couple other schools from 2A. Brandywine was one of them. So Bulldogs haven't been tested yet this year, but you know what? They also haven't faced a Quasim Benson yet. It'll be interesting to see whether or not Laurel Laurel can stop him. It'll be their toughest test for that D line, but led by Braden Hearn down low on the defensive line. I think that they're the best defense that's St. E's is going to face all year, and they're the best ones that can go out there and potentially stymie Quasim Benson and that offensive line.
And I think also offensively, the Bulldogs is just so explosive, especially with Tyleese Wilson.
I'll tell you what, if St. E can stop that RPO that they have with Caden Shockley, because he has been killer with his legs at quarterback, maybe more than his arms. If they can stop that, maybe they have a chance.
Maybe, but again, it's not looking good for them either. I do think this will be a more competitive game than the 3A game will be. Again, these teams are 2 rematches from last year as well. Again, St. Elizabeth really good, but Laurel has just been dominant all season. It would be a shame to see them fall in the championship game after the almost perfect season they've had so far. Hasn't lost a single game.
Yeah, let's be real though. If Laurel was in the 2A, they might win that championship. That's
Absolutely.
how good this team is.
Yeah, they need to be moved up. Now, we're expecting some wet weather tonight, but will it spread into the weekend? We'll check in with Chief Meteorologist Rich Wardzik for a look at your forecast.
I'm Corey Mumford from Laurel Basketball, and you're watching Delmarva Sports Insider.